Hello, my good friends. How are you today? May God bless you all. I will not introduce anything, you guys. Watch the video and feel it. Then let's evaluate together. New Orleans, French Quarter, May 2025. The rain came down in sheets, a symphony of chaos that turned the cobblestone streets into shimmering rivers of neon light. The air was thick with the scent of Mississippi River. Salt mingling with the faint, bittersweet aroma of chicory coffee from shuttered cafes. Jazz bars, usually alive with the wail of saxophones and the clink of glasses, stood silent, their signs flickering like dying stars. The storm had chased away the tourists, the street artists, the laughter. All that remained was the relentless patter of rain and the occasional rumble of thunder. Like the city itself was grumbling about the mess, Zora near Beaumont, 26, trudged through the downpour, her sneakers squelching with every step. Her curly hair, usually a crown of tight spirals, was plastered to her face. Water dripping from the ends, she clutched a battered suitcase, its wheels catching on every crack in the sidewalk, and hugged a worn backpack to her chest. Around her neck, a beaded wooden necklace, a gift from her grandmother, rested against her skin, a quiet reminder of who she was. Zora, once the manager of a bustling Creole restaurant just blocks away, now carried her entire life in 2 bags. 48 hours ago, she'd been in her tiny apartment, the walls echoing with memories of Zydeco tunes and the smell of gumbo simmering on the stove. But then the eviction notice from Cole Enterprises had arrived, cold and final. Vacate by sunset. May 3rd. No explanation. No appeal. No mercy. She paused under the awning of a shuttered antique shop, the rain hammering above her like a drumline. Her reflection stared back from the dark window, brown eyes fierce with defiance, though a smudge of mascara betrayed her exhaustion. Zora adjusted the strap of her backpack, whispering to herself, "You got this, Zora. You always got this." It was a mantra her mama had taught her back when she was a kid in braids, before her mama left her with grandma and a legacy of stubborn pride. Beaumont women didn't break, not even when the world tried to grind them down. But tonight, under the weight of the storm and the loss of everything she'd built, that pride felt like a threadbare blanket, barely keeping her warm. Zora's mind drifted to the last Zydeco dance in her neighborhood, just months ago. The whole block had come together in Miss Coralie Bess's backyard, strings of fairy lights swaying in the breeze. Old Mr. Thibodeau played his harmonica, kids spun in circles, and Zora, in a red dress that caught the moonlight, led the dance with a grin that hid her worries. Miss Coralie, her silver hair braided tight, had pulled her into a hug and said, "You're the light of this place. Zora, don't let nobody dim it." But Cole Enterprises had done just that. They'd torn down her apartment. Miss Coralie's house, the whole damn block, all for some shiny condos nobody in the neighborhood could afford. The restaurant where Zora worked had shuttered too, another casualty of progress. She reached into her backpack, pulling out a creased photo. Her and Miss Coralie in the kitchen, laughing over a pot of gumbo flour, dusting their aprons. "I'll figure it out, Miss C," Zora murmured, tucking the photo away before the rain could ruin it. She straightened, took a deep breath, and stepped back into the storm. The French Quarter, usually a riot of color and sound, was a ghost town tonight, the only music the slap of her sneakers against wet stone. She didn't know where she was going, just that she had to keep moving. A flicker of light caught her eye. A small cafe at the corner, its neon sign buzzing faintly. For a moment she considered ducking inside, but her wallet held nothing but a couple of crumpled singles. She kept walking, the suitcase rattling behind her. 2 blocks away, in a sleek black SUV with tinted windows, Thane Idris Cole sat frozen, his hands gripping the steering wheel. At 32, Thane was the picture of success. CEO of Coal Enterprises, with a sharp jawline, jet black hair, cropped close, and green eyes that could charm or command depending on the room. His tailored white shirt, now clinging to his frame from the damp, was worth more than most people's rent. But tonight he didn't feel like a kingpin. The air inside the SUV was stifling, despite the hum of the AC, and his fingers tapped a nervous rhythm on the leather. On the passenger seat lay an open file. The words, Domain, 247, Redevelopment Project, stamped in bold. At the top of the first page was a name, Zora Beaumont. Next to it, a photo of her standing in front of her block, holding a sign that read, Save Our Community. Her words printed below had haunted Thane for weeks. These homes aren't just bricks, they're our soul, where our kids grow, where we sing and pray. You're erasing a generation. Thane hadn't wanted to sign the eviction orders. He'd argued with Vian Laveau, the head of acquisitions, whose red stilettos and razor-sharp smile could cut through any objection. It's business, Thane, she'd said, her voice like honey over steel. You want to keep that CEO chair, do what needs doing. And he had. But every night since he'd driven past Zora's neighborhood, watching the lights go out one by one as families left tonight, when he saw her trudging through the rain, suitcase in tow, something inside him snapped. He shouldn't be here. Shouldn't be following her. But the sight of her defiant alone, soaked to the bone, made it impossible to turn away. He started the engine, easing the SUV forward, keeping his distance. His fingers tapped faster, a habit from years of boardroom stress. Through the rain-streaked windshield, he watched Zora pause under the antique shop's awning, her lips moving as if talking to herself. He leaned closer, muttering, Just make sure she's safe, Thane. Then you're out. But even as he said it, he knew it wasn't that simple. Not with her. Zora moved on her suitcase, rattling louder as the street grew narrower. She passed a dark alley where a rough laugh cut through the rain. 3 men lounged under a flickering street lamp, their jackets slick with water, eyes locking onto her. One tall with a tattoo snaking up his neck stepped forward, his voice slurred. Hey, sweetheart, where you headed in this mess? Need help with that bag? Zora's grip tightened on the suitcase handle, her heart pounding. She kept her voice steady, years of managing rowdy restaurant patrons kicking in. Appreciated, but I'm good. She angled away, but the man moved closer. His buddies stepping out to block her path, their laughter low and menacing. She backed up her suitcase, catching on a crack, slowing her down. Panic flared, but she forced it down, scanning for an escape. Before she could move, a voice rang out deep and commanding, slicing through the storm. Zora, there you are. I've been looking all over for you. She spun around, stunned. A man emerged from the shadows, tall and broad-shouldered, his white shirt soaked through, clinging to a frame that spoke of both strength and grace. Thane, Idris Cole, strode toward her, his green eyes locked on the men, a calm authority in his step. He reached her side, placing a hand lightly on her shoulder, as if they'd known each other forever, and faced the group. Thanks for keeping an eye on my friend, fellas, but I've got it from here. The men hesitated, sizing him up. Thane's presence, his tailored clothes even rain-soaked, and the quiet confidence in his voice shifted the dynamic. The tattooed man muttered something under his breath, then turned away, his buddies following their laughter, fading into the rain. Zora stood frozen, her breath coming in short bursts, her eyes darting to Thane. Who are you? She asked, her voice low but sharp, like she was ready to bolt. Thane offered a half-smile, warm, but tinged with something heavier. Guilt, maybe. Thane Cole. And I know you don't trust strangers, but you can't stay out here alone. He gestured toward the SUV parked nearby. I've got a place where you can dry off. Get some rest. No strings. Zora studied him, her gaze flicking over his face, searching for a lie. He knew her name showed up like some kind of guardian angel, but there was a weight in his eyes that made her pause. She glanced at the suitcase, then at the dark alley ahead, the rain still pounding. "If you're some kind of creep, I swear I'll haunt you," she said, half joking, half serious. Thane chuckled, the sound soft against the storm. "Not a creep. I promise. Just a guy who knows a good gumbo when he sees one." Zora raised an eyebrow, a spark of amusement breaking through her guard. "You're throwing gumbo at me to get me in your car. It better be the real deal." Thane Cole. She followed him to the SUV, keeping her distance, her hand still tight on the suitcase. Inside the SUV, the warmth of the heater was a shock after the cold. Zora settled into the passenger seat, her backpack hugged to her chest, watching Thane as he drove. His profile was sharp against the dim dashboard lights. High cheekbones, a jaw that could cut glass, and those green eyes that seemed to carry a story he wasn't telling. His fingers tapped the steering wheel, a nervous tick that didn't match his polished exterior. She broke the silence, her voice sharp but curious. "So how do you know my name? And don't give me some fairy tale nonsense about fate, 'cause I ain't buying it." Thane glanced at her, his eyes catching the glow of a passing street lamp. "I saw your name in a document. You fought Cole Enterprises over your neighborhood, didn't you? Wrote about how those homes were more than just buildings." Zora stiffened her grip, tightening on the backpack. "You work for them." Her tone was ice, but Thane shook his head. "Not like that. It's complicated, but Maison Ciel. That's where we're going. It's a safe place. My mom used to call it a lighthouse for lost souls. You'll see." He paused, then added with a small smile, "And if you're into gumbo, Vina's recipe might just win you over." Zora's lips twitched, but she held back a smile. "Maison Ciel. Sounds like a fancy hotel for rich folks." Thane's smile widened, genuine this time. "It's better than that. Trust me." The SUV turned onto a quiet street lined with ancient oaks, their branches swaying in the wind. Ahead, Maison Ciel emerged from the rain like a vision, a 3-story Victorian mansion painted deep purple, its wraparound porches adorned with white railings delicate as lace. Hanging baskets of flowers danced in the storm, and warm golden light spilled from the windows, a beacon in the dark. Zora's breath caught. "This ain't no motel," she whispered almost to herself. "This is something else." Thane parked, grabbing an umbrella from the back. "My mom would have loved hearing you say that," he said, his voice softening. He opened her door, holding the umbrella over her as they stepped out. Zora kept a careful distance, her eyes still scanning him, but she followed him up the creaking porch steps. Thane unlocked the heavy wooden door, its stained glass rose casting colorful shadows across their faces. The foyer glowed with the amber light of an antique chandelier, polished wood floors gleamed under Persian rugs, and a baby grand piano sat in one corner, its black surface reflecting the warmth like liquid gold. The air smelled of fresh bread and jasmine, a stark contrast to the storm outside. Before Zora could take it all in, a figure swept into the room, her turquoise caftan billowing like a sail. Evelina Vina Sable, 70, her silver hair crowned with a silk scarf, fixed them with a twinkling gaze. "Thane Cole, you dragging folks in here in the middle of a hurricane," she said, her voice rich with the cadence of a jazz singer. "And look at this beauty. Child, you must be half drowned." Zora managed a small smile, still clutching her suitcase. "Zora Beaumont, I'm just here for the night." Vina laughed, a sound like wind chimes. "Oh, sugar, that's what they all say. Come on, let's get you dry." She turned to Thane, winking. "You did good, boy. Now, Go make yourself useful and grab some towels." Thane nodded, his eyes lingering on Zora for a moment. Before he disappeared down a hallway, Zora stood in the foyer, the warmth of Maison Ciel seeping into her bones, but her guard was still up. This place, this man, this moment, it all felt too good to be true. And in her experience, when something seemed too good, it usually came with a catch. But for now, with the rain still roaring outside and nowhere else to go, she'd take the shelter, just for tonight. Hey, y'all. If you're as curious as we are about what's next for Zora and Thane, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below. What do you think Thane's hiding? Your thoughts keep this story alive, so let's hear 'em. The storm still raged outside, but inside Maison Ciel, the world felt like a different kind of magic. The foyer glowed with the soft amber light of a crystal chandelier, its prisms casting tiny rainbows across the polished wood floors. Persian rugs worn but rich with history. Muffled Zorania Beaumont's footsteps as she followed Evelina Vina Sable deeper into the house. The air carried the scent of jasmine from hidden vases and the faint, comforting aroma of fresh-baked cornbread wafting from somewhere down the hall. Zora, still clutching her battered suitcase, felt like she'd stepped into a storybook, one she wasn't sure she belonged in. Her beaded wooden necklace, a gift from her grandmother, pressed against her collarbone, grounding her in the midst of this surreal warmth. Vina, her turquoise caftan swirling like a jazz riff, led the way with the confidence of someone who'd seen it all and still chose to smile. "Come on, sugar," she said, her voice a smoky melody that could have filled a Bourbon Street stage. "Let's get you settled before you catch your death. Thane's fetching towels, but knowing him, he'll get distracted by some old book in the library." She glanced back at Zora, her eyes twinkling with mischief. "You look like you could use a hot meal and a good story." "Lucky for you, I got both." Zora managed a small nod, her guard still up. "I'm just here for the night, Miss Vina," she said, her tone polite but firm. The older woman laughed, a sound like wind chimes dancing in the breeze. "Oh, child, call me Vina. And don't you worry about just one night. Maison Ciel has a way of changing plans." She winked, pushing open a heavy oak door that led to a grand living room. The space was a masterpiece of lived-in elegance. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves lined one wall, stuffed with leather-bound volumes and colorful paperbacks, their spines telling stories of their own overstuffed armchairs, and a velvet sofa clustered around a stone fireplace, where a low fire crackled, casting shadows that danced across the room. A baby grand piano stood in the corner, its black lacquer gleaming like a still lake under the glow of antique lamps. Zora's breath caught her suitcase forgotten for a moment. "This ain't no regular bed and breakfast," she murmured almost to herself. Vina grinned, plopping into an armchair with the grace of a retired diva. "You're right about that. Zora Maison Ciel ain't regular anything. Helene Cole Thane's mama built this place to be a lighthouse for lost souls, folks who need a soft place to land when the world's done them dirty." She leaned forward, her silver bangles clinking. "Sound like anyone you know." Zora's lips twitched, but she didn't take the bait. She set her suitcase down carefully, like she was afraid to disturb the room's perfection. "Sounds like a nice idea," she said, her voice neutral. "But I've learned the hard way. Nice usually comes with a price tag." Vina's eyes softened, but before she could respond, footsteps echoed from the hall. Thane Idris Cole appeared carrying a stack of fluffy white towels, his white shirt still damp, but now untucked, giving him a slightly less polished look. His green eyes found Zora's, and for a moment the room seemed to shrink, the crackle of the fire louder than it should have been. "Towels, as promised," he said, handing them to her with a small smile. Their fingers brushed, and Zora pulled back quickly, clutching the towels like a shield. "Thanks," she muttered, avoiding his gaze. Vina clapped her hands, breaking the tension. "All right, y'all. Enough standing around looking like wet puppies. Zora, let's get you to your room, Thane. You go check on Ismene. She's probably sketching in the kitchen again and letting my cornbread burn. Thane nodded his eyes, lingering on Zora for a beat longer before he headed toward the back of the house, his footsteps fading into the hum of the storm. Zora followed Vina up a curved wooden staircase, the banister polished smooth by years of hands. The walls were lined with framed photographs and paintings, scenes of New Orleans street festivals, jazz bands, and faces. Zora didn't recognize, but felt oddly familiar. One photo caught her eye. A woman with Thane's green eyes, her hair a cascade of dark waves, standing in the garden outside a rose bush blooming behind her. "That's Helene," Vina said, noticing Zora's pause. She poured her heart into this place, said it had a soul of its own, always knew who needed it most. Zora nodded, but her mind was elsewhere. Thane's words in the car, about knowing her name from a document, gnawed at her. Who was he really, and why did he care about a stranger like her? She pushed the thought down as Vina opened a door at the end of the hall, revealing the blue room. The space was like stepping into a dream. A queen-sized bed draped in soft blue linens dominated the room, its headboard carved with delicate vines. A window seat piled with cushions overlooked the rain-soaked garden, where lightning briefly illuminated a tangle of roses and jasmine. French doors led to a small balcony, their glass panes rattling faintly in the wind. A private bathroom door stood ajar, revealing a clawfoot tub and a stack of fresh towels. The air smelled of lavender and old wood, and a small desk held a vase of fresh flowers, their petals glowing in the lamplight. Zora set her suitcase down, her fingers trailing over the smooth wood of the desk. "This is too much," she said quietly. "I can't afford a place like this." Vina waved a hand, her bangles jangling. "Ain't nobody asking you to pay, child. Maison Ciel don't work like that. You stay as long as you need. Figure out your next move. That's how Helene wanted it." Zora's eyes narrowed, her restaurant manager instincts kicking in. "Nobody gives something for nothing, Vina." "What's the catch?" Vina's smile didn't waver, but there was a knowing glint in her eyes. "The only catch is, you gotta let yourself rest. You're carrying a heavy load, Zora. I see it in your shoulders. Let Maison Ciel hold it for a spell." She patted Zora's arm, then turned to leave kitchens open. "If you're hungry, I'll save you some cornbread. Sleep tight, sugar." The door clicked shut, and Zora was alone. She sank onto the bed, the mattress so soft it felt like a cloud. For the first time in hours, she let her guard slip just a fraction. The room was beautiful, the kind of place she'd only seen in magazines, but it didn't ease the knot in her chest. She pulled out her phone, the screen cracked but still functional, and dialed the one person she could always count on. Kellis Yara Tate picked up on the second ring, her voice a burst of energy even through the static of the storm. "Zora girl, where you at? I've been texting you all day, worried sick." Kellis, 28, was a freelance investigative journalist with a knack for sniffing out trouble and a laugh that could light up a room. She'd been Zora's best friend since high school, the two of them inseparable through every heartbreak and triumph. "I'm okay," Zora said, her voice steadier than she felt. "I'm at this place called Maison Ciel. Some guy, Thane Cole, picked me up in the rain, said I could stay here." She recounted the night, the alley, Thane's rescue, the strange warmth of this mansion. Kellis listened her silence, a rare thing until Zora mentioned Thane's name. "Hold up," Kellis said, her tone sharpening. "Thane Cole, as in Cole Enterprises. Zora, those are the folks who tore down your block. You sure he's not playing you?" Zora's stomach dropped, the knot in her chest tightening. "He said he saw my name in a document she admitted knew about my fight with the company, but he didn't say he worked for them. Just that it's complicated." Kelly snorted. Complicated my foot. Ain't nobody that fine and that helpful without an agenda. You watch yourself, girl. I'm digging into Cole Enterprises for a story. Vion Laveau, their acquisition shark, is on my radar. I'll see if Thane's name pops up. She softened her voice warm again. You need me to come get you. I got a couch and some leftover red beans and rice. Zora smiled, the first real one all night. I'm good for now, Kellis. But keep digging. I don't trust this guy, no matter how pretty his eyes are. Kellis laughed, loud and bright. Pretty eyes, huh? Okay, Zora, but don't go falling for no corporate prince. Good looks. Don't pay the rent. They hung up, and Zora leaned back, Kellis's warning echoing in her mind. She didn't trust Thane, not yet, but she couldn't deny the pull of Maison Ciel, or the way his voice had steadied her in the rain. Downstairs in the kitchen, Thane stood at a butcher block island pouring coffee into a mug. The kitchen was a blend of old and new copper pots hung from a ceiling rack, while a modern stove gleamed under the light. Ismaine Dufour, 60, sat at the island, her close-cropped gray hair catching the glow as she sketched in a notebook. Her hands stained with charcoal moved with quiet precision, capturing the curve of a rose petal. You're up late, she said, not looking up, her voice soft but probing. Thane shrugged, handing her a mug. Couldn't sleep. Storms got me restless. Ismaine raised an eyebrow, her dark eyes sharp. The storm, or the girl you brought in? Thane froze, then forced a casual smile. She needed help, Ismaine. That's all. But Ismaine's gaze didn't waver. Helene always said this house chooses its guests. That girl Zora, she's got a fire in her. Be careful you don't get burned. Before Thane could respond, Vina swept in her caftan trailing. Y'all gossiping without me. Shame on you. She checked a pan of cornbread in the oven, the golden crust perfect. Zora's settled in the blue room. Poor thing's carrying the weight of the world. But she's tough as nails. She turned to Thane, hands on hips. You gonna tell her the truth, boy, or you planning to play hero a while longer? Thane's jaw tightened, his fingers tapping the counter. I'll tell her when the time's right. She's been through enough tonight. Vina shook her head, but her smile was kind. Time's never right for hard truths. Thane. But you keep dodging 'em, and they'll catch up. She cut a slice of cornbread, wrapping it in a napkin. I'm saving this for Zora. Y'all behave while I'm gone. As Vina left, Thane sank into a chair. Ismaine's sketch now showing a woman in the rain, her face half hidden, but unmistakably Zora's. He rubbed his temples, the weight of his secrets heavier than ever. Upstairs. Zora stood at the window watching the storm, her phone still warm from Kellis's call. Maison Ciel was a haven, but Thane Cole was a question mark. And Zora Beaumont didn't trust answers that came too easy. The morning after the storm, Maison Ciel woke to a world washed clean. Dawn crept into the blue room, like a shy guest, painting the walls in hues of lavender and gold. Zora Nia. Beaumont stirred beneath the soft blue linens, her body sinking into the mattress's embrace. For a moment, she lay still, convinced the previous night had been a dream. The rain, the stranger, this mansion that felt plucked from a fairy tale. But the pale blue ceiling with its delicate crown molding was real, as were the gauzy curtains fluttering in the morning breeze. The faint aroma of coffee and frying bacon drifted up from below, pulling her fully awake. Zora slipped out of bed, her bare feet touching the cool hardwood floor. She padded to the French doors, opening them to a breathtaking view of the garden. The storm had left behind a riot of color. Morning glories climbed antique trellises, their purple-blue petals heavy with raindrops, while a massive oak spread its branches over a weathered wooden swing. and there walking a winding path with a steaming mug in hand was Thane Idris Cole. Even in casual clothes, dark jeans and a light gray Henley with sleeves rolled up, he carried himself with an effortless grace. He paused to inspect a rose bush, his fingers brushing a bloom with a tenderness that made Zora's heart skip unbidden. She shook her head, pushing the feeling away. "Get it together, Zora," she muttered, turning from the window. Thane was a question mark, and Kellis's warning from last night echoed in her mind. Cole, Enterprises tore down your block. Watch yourself. She showered quickly, the hot water easing the ache in her shoulders, and dressed in her best remaining outfit, dark jeans and a soft green sweater that brought out the gold flecks in her brown eyes. The beaded wooden necklace, her grandmother's gift, rested against her chest, a reminder of her roots. She needed answers, and she wasn't leaving Maison Ciel without them. Downstairs, the kitchen was a hive of warmth and chaos. Copper pots gleamed from a ceiling rack, and sunlight streamed through windows overlooking the garden. Vina Sable, in a vibrant orange caftan, stood at a commercial-grade stove, flipping pancakes with the flair of a performer. Ismaine Dufour sat at the butcher block island, sketching in her notebook, her gray hair catching the light like a halo, a massive orange tabby. Lazare dozed beside her coffee mug, his tail flicking lazily. "Morning, sugar," Vina called, spotting Zora in the doorway. "You sleep okay? Or did the storm keep you up?" "Like a rock," Zora said, her voice softer than she intended. "This place, it's something else." Ismaine looked up, her dark eyes assessing. "You're in the blue room," she said, more statement than question. "Good choice, Thane. The light suits her." Zora felt a flush creep up her neck under their attention, but before she could respond, Thane appeared carrying a tray of fresh fruit. "Morning," he said, his green eyes finding Zora's. The corner of his mouth lifted, and for a moment the kitchen felt too small. The air charged with something unspoken. He set the tray down, his movements deliberate, like he was trying not to spook her. "Hope you're hungry. Vina's pancakes are legendary." Zora nodded, taking a seat at the island, her guard still up. "Smells good," she said, her tone neutral but polite. Vina slid a plate of golden pancakes in front of her, drizzled with cane syrup. "Eat up, child. You need some meat on those bones after last night?" She winked, then turned to Thane. "And you don't just stand there looking pretty. Pour the coffee." Thane chuckled, grabbing a pot and filling mugs, his fingers brushing Zora's as he handed her one. The contact sent a spark through her, and she pulled back, focusing on her plate to hide the flush on her cheeks. The meal unfolded with surprising ease. Vina regaled them with stories of her jazz-singing days, her voice painting pictures of smoky clubs and late-night jam sessions. Ismaine added quiet observations, her charcoal pencil never still sketching Lazare's sleeping form. Zora found herself relaxing, drawn into their warmth, despite herself, but Thane's presence. His occasional glances kept her on edge. He was too comfortable, too kind, and Kellis's words gnawed at her. Ain't nobody that helpful without an agenda. After breakfast, Zora offered to help clear the dishes, needing a moment to think. Thane joined her at the sink, drying plates as she washed. "You don't have to do this," he said, his voice low, almost intimate in the quiet kitchen. Zora shrugged, scrubbing a plate harder than necessary. "I don't like sitting still, and I'm not here to be a guest, Thane. I pay my way one way or another." He paused, his towel stilling. "You don't owe anybody anything here, Zora. That's not how Maison Ciel works." She met his eyes, searching for a lie. "Maybe, but I've learned folks don't give without expecting something back. So, what's your deal? Why'd you really help me?" Thane's jaw tightened, his fingers tapping the counter. a nervous tic she was starting to recognize. "I told you I saw your name in a document. You fought for your neighborhood." That stuck with me. His voice was steady, but there was a shadow in his eyes, something he wasn't saying. Zora set the plate down, drying her hands. "Stuck with you how? You some kind of do-gooder? Or is this about easing your conscience?" Thane's smile was tight, almost pained, maybe a little of both. "But I promise, you're safe here." She wanted to press him, but Vina's voice called from the living room, interrupting. "Zora, come see this painting his main's working on. It's got your name written all over it." Reluctantly, Zora followed, leaving Thane at the sink. But her questions didn't fade. If anything, they grew sharper, like a blade being honed. She spent the morning exploring Maison Ciel, its rooms a maze of history and heart. In the library, she found a shelf of journals, their leather covers worn soft. One caught her eye, embossed with a rose, and the initials H.C. Helene Cole, Thane's mother. Curiosity got the better of her, and she opened it, flipping to a page dated 3 years ago. "Maison Ciel knows who it needs," Helene had written in elegant script. "A soul with fire in her bones, coming in the rain when hope is lost. She'll light the way, even if she doesn't know it yet." Zora's breath caught her fingers, tracing the words. It was eerie, like Helene had seen her coming. But the journal offered no answers, only more questions. She tucked it back, her mind racing. That afternoon, while Thane was out on an errand, Zora slipped into his office, a small room off the foyer, lined with books and files. She wasn't sure what she was looking for, but Kellis's warning pushed her forward. A folder on the desk caught her eye, labeled Domain 247 Redevelopment Project. Her heart pounded as she opened it, and there at the top of a stack of eviction notices was her name, and Thane's signature, bold and unmistakable, dated 8 months ago. The room spun. Zora sank into a chair, the folder trembling in her hands. Thane wasn't just some bystander who'd read her name in a document. He was the CEO of Cole Enterprises, the man who'd signed the order to tear down her home, her community, her life. Every kind word, every gentle glance had been a lie. Rage and betrayal surged through her, hot and sharp. She grabbed her backpack, stuffing her few belongings inside, and stormed out of Maison Ciel, the journal's words mocking her. A soul with fire in her bones. She didn't stop until she reached Kellis, Yara Tate's apartment in the Treme, a cozy walk-up cluttered with books and half-finished articles. Kellis opened the door, her braids pulled into a messy bun, and took one look at Zora's face. "Oh girl, what happened?" she said, pulling her inside. Zora collapsed onto the couch, the folder still clutched in her hands, and told her everything. The journal, the file, Thane's signature. "He knew who I was from the start." "Kellis," Zora said, her voice breaking. "He played me like a damn fiddle, acting all noble, while his company ruined my life." Kellis's eyes narrowed, her journalist instincts kicking in. "That snake, I knew he was too smooth. Listen, I've been digging into Cole Enterprises for a story. Vion Laveau. Their acquisitions head is the real puppet master, but Thane's name's all over the paperwork. We'll figure this out, Zora. I promise." Kelly's poured them both coffee, her voice softening. "You okay, though? I mean, really okay?" Zora shook her head, tears stinging her eyes. "I don't know, Kelly's. I thought maybe Maison Ciel was a fresh start. But it's just another trap." Kellis squeezed her hand. "You're stronger than any trap. Zora Beaumont. Always have been." That evening, Zora took a bus to Miss Coralie Bess's new place, a small rental on the edge of the city. Coralie, 65, her silver hair braided tight, welcomed her with a hug that smelled of sage and home, over a plate of red beans and rice. Zora poured out her heart, the eviction, Thane, the betrayal. Coralie listened, her eyes wise and steady. "Child, you can't change what's done," she said, her voice like a bomb. "But you can build what's next. Our people. Black folks in this city have been through worse and come out shining. You got that same fire. Don't let this man or anyone dim it." Coralie's words sank deep, stirring something in Zora. She thought of her grandmother's necklace, of the Zydeco dances of the community that had raised her. Thane had taken so much, but he hadn't taken her strength. She returned to Maison Ciel that night, her resolve hardened. She wasn't running anymore. She'd face Thane, demand the truth, and decide her own path. The mansion was quiet when she arrived, the storm long gone, leaving a sky full of stars. Thane was in the hidden garden, a secluded nook behind the main house, its mosaic fountain glowing under fairy lights. Roses climbed iron trellises, their scent heavy in the air. He looked up as Zora approached his face, lighting with relief, then faltering at her expression. "Zora," he started, but she cut him off, holding up the folder. "You signed this," she said, her voice steady but laced with fury. "You're the CEO of Cole Enterprises. You destroyed my home, my neighborhood, and then you brought me here like some kind of savior. Why, Thane? Was it guilt, pity, or just a game?" Thane's face paled, his hands clenching at his sides. "It's not what you think," he said, his voice raw. "I didn't want to sign those orders, Vion. She pushed me, used things against me. But when I saw your name, your words about your community, it broke something in me. I followed you that night because I couldn't let you get hurt. Not after what I'd done." Zora's eyes burned, her heart torn between rage and the sincerity in his voice. "You should have told me," she said, her voice cracking. "From the start you should have told me." Thane stepped closer, his eyes pleading. "I wanted to. Every day I meant to. But I saw you here finding a home and I couldn't bear to break that. I'm trying to make it right, Zora. I swear." The fountain's gentle splash filled the silence, the roses swaying in the breeze. Zora's anger wavered, her heart pounding with a dangerous mix of hurt and longing. Without thinking, she closed the distance between them, her hands gripping his shirt as she pulled him into a kiss. Deep, desperate, a collision of pain and need. Thane froze, then responded, his arms wrapping around her, his touch both fierce and tender. For a moment the world was just them, the garden, the stars. Zora pulled back, breathless, her eyes locked on his. "This doesn't mean I forgive you," she whispered, her voice trembling. "It just means I want to try." Thane nodded his thumb, brushing her cheek. "I'll earn it. Zora, whatever it takes." A nightingale sang somewhere in the garden. Its melody weaving through the tension, Zora stepped back, the folder still in her hand, her heart a battleground of trust and doubt. Back in the kitchen, Joran Cade, Thane's assistant, was waiting a stack of files in his arms. "Boss, you okay?" he asked, his dark eyes narrowing. "You look like you just ran a marathon." Thane managed a weak smile. "Something like that." Joran grinned, oblivious to the storm in Thane's heart. "Well, I got those docs you asked for, but I gotta warn you. Vion's sniffing around. If she catches me, I'm toast." He fumbled the files, one sliding to the floor. "Man, if she sees this, I'm her next lunch special." Thane chuckled, despite himself clapping Joran on the shoulder. "You're safe, Joran, for now." But as he glanced toward the garden where Zora had disappeared into the night, he knew the real battle was just beginning. The late morning sun bathed Maison Ciel in a golden glow, its purple Victorian facade gleaming like a jewel against the lush green of the garden. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of chicory coffee and the faint tang of lemon polish, as if the house itself was bracing for battle. Zora, Nia Beaumont, stood in the foyer, her arms crossed, her beaded wooden necklace catching the light. The folder from Thane's office, the one with his signature on her eviction notice, lay on the hall table, a silent accusation. Last night's kiss in the hidden garden still burned in her memory, a reckless moment of vulnerability that left her heart raw and her resolve shaky. She wanted to trust Thane Idris Cole, but the truth of his role in her loss was a wound that wouldn't close. Zora's phone buzzed, pulling her from her thoughts. A text from Kellis Yara Tate flashed on the cracked screen. Vion Laveau's making moves. Found some shady deals tied to Cole Enterprises. Watch your back, girl. Zora's jaw tightened. Kellis, her best friend and a relentless journalist, had been digging into Vion, the acquisitions head at Cole Enterprises, whose red stilettos and cold smile were as infamous as her ruthless deals. If Vion was involved, Thane's complicated story just got a lot messier. Before Zora could reply, Evelina Vina Sable swept into the foyer, her crimson caftan billowing like a flag. Morning sugar, she called her silver bangles, jangling as she adjusted a vase of jasmine. You look like you're plotting a revolution. What's on your mind? Zora managed a small smile. Vina's warmth, a balm despite her turmoil. Just trying to figure out what's real around here, she said, her voice low. Thane's got some explaining to do. Vina's eyes softened, but her tone was firm. Thane's carrying his own ghosts. Zora. But don't let that folder tell you the whole story. Talk to him, child. Truth. Don't come easy, but it's worth digging for. She patted Zora's arm, then turned as Ismaine Dufour appeared, her charcoal-stained hands clutching a sketch pad. Vina Lazars knocked over the paint cans again. Ismaine said, her voice calm but exasperated. If that cat ruins my mural, I'm turning him into a still life. Vina laughed, her voice echoing like a jazz riff. That cat's got more lives than I do. Come on, let's save your masterpiece. She winked at Zora. You hold down the fort, sugar, and don't let Thane off too easy. As they disappeared toward the studio, Zora's phone buzzed again. A call this time. She answered, and Kellis's voice burst through urgent and sharp. Zora, you sitting down? Kellis said, her words tumbling fast. I just got a tip from a source at Cole Enterprises. Vion's pushing to claim Maison Ciel as company property. Says it was bought with corporate funds back in the day. Not Helene's trust. She's got lawyers sniffing around and they're coming for you. Zora's heart sank, her fingers tightening around the phone. What? Maison Ciel Kellis. That's insane. Thane said. It was his mom's. Thane says a lot of things. Kellis shot back. My source, some assistant named Joran, says Vion's got documents forged or not to back her up. She's also leaking stories to the press painting you as a troublemaker squatting in a corporate asset. You need to move fast, girl. Zora's mind raced the folder on the table now, a ticking bomb. Thanks, Kellis, she said, her voice steely. Keep digging. I'm not letting her take this place. She hung up her resolve, hardening. Maison Ciel wasn't just a shelter. It was a symbol of everything she'd lost and everything she could rebuild. She wouldn't let Vion or Thane's secrets steal it. She found Thane in the library, surrounded by shelves of books and the faint scent of old leather. He was flipping through a file, his dark hair falling over his forehead, his green eyes distant. He looked up as she entered, his face softening. Zora, he said, standing. I was hoping we could talk. Talk. Zora cut him off, her voice sharp as she slapped the folder onto the table. How about you start with this? Vion Laveau's coming for Maison Ciel. Thane says it's company property. You gonna tell me you didn't know? Thane's eyes widened, his hand freezing midair. Vion. No, that's impossible. Maison. Ciel belongs to the Brooks Women's Trust. My mom made sure of it. His voice was steady, but the tap of his fingers on the table betrayed his nerves. Zora crossed her arms, her gaze unwavering. Your mom's trust, huh? Then why's Vion got lawyers and forged papers saying otherwise? And why's she smearing me in the press, calling me a squatter? You in on this, Thane? Another way to ease your guilt. Thane's jaw clenched, his eyes flashing with something between hurt and determination. I'm not in on anything, he said, stepping closer. Vion's been gunning for control since my dad died. She knows too much about the company about me, but I swear, Zora, I'd never let her touch this place. Or you. His words hung between them, heavy with sincerity. But Zora's heart was a battlefield. She wanted to believe him, but the folder, the press leaks, Vion's shadow. It was too much. Prove it, she said, her voice low, or I'm out of here. Thane, for good. He nodded, his expression resolute. Give me a day. I'll get answers. Just don't leave yet. Zora held his gaze, then turned away, her footsteps echoing as she left the library. Determined to fight back, Zora decided to organize a community event at Maison Ciel, a fundraiser to support the families displaced by coal enterprises, including Miss Coralie Bess and others from her old block. She spent the day planning her restaurant manager skills kicking in. Vina and Ismine jumped in. Vina calling old jazz friends to perform, Ismine designing flyers with her artist's touch. This is gonna be a party. New Orleans won't forget, Vina declared, her eyes sparkling. We'll show 'em. Maison Ciel's got heart. The event took shape in the garden, where string lights were strung between oaks and tables were set with checkered cloths. Miss Coralie arrived bringing a massive pot of gumbo that filled the air with the scent of bayou spices. Zora, you're making us proud, she said, her silver braids glinting as she hugged her. This is what community does, lifts each other up. Zora smiled, her necklace warm against her skin, but Kellis's warning about Vion loomed like a storm cloud. The fundraiser kicked off at dusk, the garden alive with music and laughter. A Zydeco band led by Vina's old friend Mr. Thibodeau filled the air with accordion riffs and washboard rhythms. Kids from the old neighborhood danced their sneakers, kicking up dust while elders swapped stories over plates of gumbo and cornbread. Zora moved through the crowd, her green sweater catching the glow of fairy lights, her smile masking the tension in her chest. She spotted Thane near the fountain. His gray Henley rolled up, helping set up a donation table. Their eyes met, and for a moment, the noise faded, the memory of their kiss sparking between them. But the moment shattered when a commotion erupted at the garden gate. 3 men in cheap suits, clearly hired muscle, pushed their way in, one holding a megaphone. This event's unauthorized, he barked, his voice cutting through the music. Maison Ciel's under review by coal enterprises. Clear out, or we'll call the cops. The crowd stilled, murmurs rippling. Zora's heart pounded, her eyes narrowing. Vion's work, no doubt. Before she could act, Vina stepped forward, her caftan swirling, a pitcher of iced tea in hand. "Oh, honey, you must be lost," she said, her voice dripping with mock sweetness. "This is a private party and you're cramping our style." With a dramatic flourish, she tripped, splashing tea over the men who yelped and stumbled back. The crowd erupted in laughter, kids cheering, and Mr. Thibodeau struck up a lively tune, drowning out the megaphone. "Oops, my bad," Vina called, winking at Zora. "Y'all want some more tea?" Zora seized the moment, climbing onto a chair. Listen up, y'all, she called, her voice carrying over the music. This is our home, our community. Cole Enterprises thinks they can scare us, but we're stronger than that. Every dollar we raise tonight goes to rebuilding what they tore down. Who's with me? The crowd roared, clapping and stomping their energy a wall against Vion's threat. Thane watched her, his expression a mix of awe and resolve, and for a fleeting second, Zora felt unstoppable. But the victory was short-lived. As the band played on, Kellis pulled Zora aside, her face grim. I just got a call from my source, Joran Cade. Thane's assistant, Vion's lawyers, are meeting tomorrow to file a claim on Maison Ciel. They've got forged documents saying it was bought with company funds, not Helene's trust. And Zora, she's got dirt on Thane's stuff from his dad's days that could ruin him. Zora's stomach churned, her eyes flicking to Thane, who was laughing with a group of kids. What kind of dirt? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Kellis shook her head. Joran didn't say, but it's bad. Vion's playing hardball and Thane's in deep. You need to decide if you're fighting for this place or walking away. Zora's gaze returned to the garden, where Miss Coralie was serving gumbo. Vina was dancing with Mr. Thibodeau, and Ismaine was sketching the scene. Lazare curled at her feet. Maison Ciel wasn't just a house. It was a lifeline, a chance to rebuild. But Thane's secrets, Vion's threats and the press leaks painting her as a troublemaker, made it feel like the ground was crumbling beneath her. She found Thane by the donation table, his sleeves rolled higher, sweat glistening on his brow. We need to talk, she said, her voice firm. He nodded, sensing the shift, and followed her to the hidden garden, where the fountain's glow cast shadows on the roses. Vion's coming for Maison Ciel tomorrow. Zora said, her eyes locked on his. She's got forged papers and dirt on you, something about your dad. You gonna tell me what's going on, or do I have to find out from the headlines? Thane's face tightened, his fingers tapping the stone edge of the fountain. My dad, he cut corners, made deals that weren't clean. When he died, I cleaned up what I could. But Vion knows everything. She's been holding it over me, pushing me to keep the company's old ways. He met her gaze, his voice raw. I'm trying to change it, Zora. For you, for Maison Ciel, for all of us. But I need time. Time? Zora's voice rose, her hands balling into fists. Thane, I'm out here fighting for a place I just met while you're sitting on secrets that could burn it down. You want me to trust you? Start acting like it. Thane stepped closer, his eyes pleading. I'm on your side. Zora, I know I messed up, but I'm not letting Vion win. Give me one chance to prove it, too. The nightingale's song filled the silence, the roses trembling in the breeze. Zora's heart pounded, torn between the man in front of her and the lies behind him. She turned away, her voice soft, but resolute. You've got until tomorrow, Thane. Don't make me regret staying. As she walked back to the party, the Zydeco music swelling, she felt the weight of her choice. Maison Ciel was worth fighting for, but trusting Thane might be the biggest risk of all. The sun rose over New Orleans, like a promise, its golden rays piercing the morning mist that clung to the oaks outside Maison Ciel. Inside the Victorian mansion, the air buzzed with urgency, the scent of chicory coffee mingling with the faint tang of ink and old paper. Zora Nia Beaumont stood in the library, her beaded wooden necklace glinting as she pored over a stack of files spread across a mahogany table. Her green sweater was rumpled, her curls tied back in a hasty bun, but her brown eyes burned with determination. The fundraiser last night had been a triumph, but Vion Laveau's threat loomed larger than ever, a legal claim on Maison Ciel backed by forged documents and a smear campaign painting Zora as a troublemaker. Time was running out, and Thane Idris Cole's secrets were still a shadow between them. Zora glanced at Thane, who stood across the table. His dark hair tousled his grey Henley sleeves rolled up as he sorted through another pile of papers. His green eyes were focused, but the tap of his fingers on the table betrayed his nerves. Last night in the hidden garden, Zora had given him one day to prove he was on her side. Now, with Vion's lawyer set to strike at noon that day, was nearly gone. "Anything yet?" Zora asked, her voice sharp, but not unkind. Thane shook his head, his jaw tight. "Not yet, but Joran's pulling every file he can from the company server. If Vion's forging documents, there's got to be a trail." Joran, Cade, Thane's assistant, had become an unlikely ally. The 25-year-old, with his quick grin and knack for finding trouble, had slipped Zora a USB drive last night, whispering, "This is everything I could grab without Vion noticing. Don't let her eat me alive." Zora had smiled despite herself, but the drive's contents, emails, contracts, and financial records were a maze of corporate jargon. She needed something concrete, something to stop Vion in her tracks. The library door creaked open, and Ismaine Dufour stepped in. Her charcoal-stained hands clutching a leather-bound ledger. Her grey hair was pulled into a neat bun, her dark eyes sharp with purpose. "Found this in the attic," she said, setting the ledger down. "It's Helene's. Looks like she kept records of every purchase, every donation, every guest. If Maison Ciel's tied to the Brooks Women's Trust, it'll be in here." Zora's heart leapt, but she kept her voice steady. "Let's hope so. Is mine. We're running out of time." Evelina Vina Sable followed her turquoise caftan, swirling a tray of coffee and beignets in her hands. "Y'all need fuel if you're gonna save this place," she said, her voice warm but firm. "And don't give me that no time to eat nonsense. Helene wouldn't stand for it." She set the tray down, winking at Zora. "You're carrying us all sugar. Eat a beignet. Keep that fire burning." Zora managed a small smile, grabbing a pastry, its powdered sugar dusting her fingers. Vina's humor, like the Zydeco from last night, was a lifeline in the storm. As they dug into the ledger, Zora's phone buzzed a text from Kellis. "Yara Tate. Joran sent me more docs. Vion's forging dates on the Maison Ciel deed, but she's got a mole in the company covering her tracks. Board meetings at noon. You ready?" Zora typed back. "Ready as I'll ever be. Keep Joran safe." Kellis's reply was instant. "He's more scared of Vion's heels than her lawyers." "We got this." Zora's lips twitched, but the weight of the day pressed down harder. Thane's voice broke her thoughts. "Here," he said, his finger jabbing at a page in the ledger. October 1985. Helene's signature confirming Maison Ciel was purchased through the Brooks Women's Trust Not Company funds. "And look, there's a notarized deed filed with the city." Zora leaned over her heart, racing as she read the faded ink. The document was clear, airtight, a shield against Vion's lies. "This is it," she said, her voice trembling with relief. "This proves Maison Ciel's ours." Ismaine nodded, her sketchpad open to a new drawing. A woman standing in a garden, her face lit by starlight. "Helene knew what she was doing," she said softly. "She built this place to last for people like you." "Zora." Thane's eyes met Zora's, a silent apology in their depths. "We've got the proof," he said. "But Vion won't go down easy. She's got the board in her pocket, and she's not above playing dirty." Zora straightened her resolve like steel. "Then we play dirtier. Let's take this to the board meeting. Show 'em who they're really dealing with." Thane nodded, a spark of admiration in his gaze. "You're calling the shots, Zora. I'm with you." The words hung between them, heavy with the promise of last night's kiss. But Zora pushed the thought aside. This wasn't about her heart. It was about Maison Ciel, about Miss Coralie, about every family Cole Enterprises had displaced. The Cole Enterprises tower loomed over the New Orleans skyline, a blade of glass and steel cutting into the noon sky. Inside the 70-story building, the boardroom was a study in cold power. A long mahogany table gleamed under fluorescent lights, floor-to-ceiling windows, framing the city below. The board members, a mix of gray suits and sharp-eyed executives, shuffled papers and whispered their tension. Palpable. Vion Laveau sat at the far end, her blood-red suit a splash of warning, her perfectly manicured nails drumming on the table. Her dark hair was swept into an elegant updo, but her smile was all predator. Her eyes glinting as Zora and Thane entered. Mr. Cole said Maxwell Chen, the CFO clearing his throat. "We weren't expecting additional guests." His eyes flicked to Zora, who stood tall in her green sweater, the ledger and USB drive in her hands. Thane's voice was steel wrapped in silk. "Miss Beaumont has every right to be here, especially since we're discussing property that legally belongs to her." Vion's sculpted eyebrows rose, her smile tightening. "Excuse me." Zora stepped forward, placing the ledger on the table with a deliberate thud. Maison Ciel was purchased through the Brooks Women's Trust in 1985. She said, her voice clear and commanding. Not a dime of company. Money touched it. She slid copies of the deed and Helene's records across the table. Her eyes locked on Vion. "Your forged documents. They're lies. And we've got proof." She plugged the USB drive into a laptop, pulling up Joran's files. Emails showing Vion's orders to falsify dates. Bank records proving no corporate funds were used. The room fell silent, the board members exchanging uneasy glances. Vion's smile didn't waver, but her nails stopped drumming. "This is absurd," she said, her voice smooth as ice. "Those records are outdated, and Miss Beaumont is hardly a credible source. She's been stirring trouble since her eviction. Hardly the guardian of a historic trust." Zora's blood boiled, but she kept her cool, her restaurant manager poise kicking in. "Trouble," she said, her tone sharp. "I'm fighting for my community. Something you wouldn't understand. Vion Maison Ciel's not just a building. It's a home for people you left in the dust." Thane stepped up, his presence a quiet storm. "Vion, you've been falsifying records since my father's time," he said, his voice cutting through the room. "I've gone through every file, every transaction. You want to talk about credibility? Let's discuss the audits you've been dodging." Vion's face paled, her composure cracking. "You wouldn't dare," she hissed, leaning forward. "You think you can air the company's dirty laundry and walk away clean. Your father's sins are yours, Thane." The boardroom doors swung open, and Kellis Yara Tate strode in a press badge pinned to her jacket, followed by 2 reporters with cameras. Zora's lips curved in recognition. Kellis had come through. "Right on time," Zora said, her voice steady. "I believe we promised the press an exclusive on how Cole Enterprises tried to steal a women's trust property and how that trust has been protecting families for generations." Panic flickered across the board members' faces. Maxwell Chen adjusting his tie nervously. "Perhaps we should discuss this privately," he stammered. But Thane's voice cracked like a whip. "No more secrets. This company's been hiding too long." He turned to the board, his gaze unflinching. "I'm calling for a vote of no confidence in the current board, effective immediately followed by a full restructuring. My first act as CEO will be to establish an ethics committee headed by Miss Beaumont." Vion shot to her feet, her face a mask of fury. "You can't do this, I can," Thane said, his voice calm but unyielding. "As majority shareholder, it's my right. Unless you'd prefer to take it to court. I'm sure the press would love that story." The reporters were already scribbling one, live streaming the showdown. Zora opened another folder, her voice ringing with authority. "I've drafted proposals for a community advisory board, focusing on sustainable development that lifts people up, not tears them down. The kind of work coal enterprises should have been doing all along." The vote was swift, the board's hands rising one by one, their faces shell-shocked. 12 in favor. 3 against. Vion stood frozen, her eyes blazing. "You'll regret this," she hissed, her gaze flicking between Zora and Thane. "Both of you." Zora met her stare unflinching. "The only thing I regret is how long it took to stand up to folks like you. That ends today." As the board members filed out, followed by the eager reporters, Thane turned to Zora, his expression a mix of exhaustion and pride. "That was incredible," he said, his voice soft. "You were incredible." Zora's eyes softened, a small smile breaking through. "We did it together, Thane, just like Helene knew we would." The sunlight shifted, painting golden stripes across the now empty boardroom, the city sprawling below like a canvas of possibility. Back at Maison Ciel, the garden was quiet, the string lights from the fundraiser still swaying gently. Zora and Thane sat on the wooden swing, the air heavy with the scent of jasmine and the promise of summer. Vina and Ismain were in the kitchen, Vina humming a jazz tune, while Ismain sketched Lazare sprawled across the counter. "We've got a fighting chance now," Zora said, her voice steady but tired. "But Vion's not done. She's got something up her sleeve." Thane nodded, his hand brushing hers on the swing. "She's always got an angle, but we've got the truth in you. That's more than she can handle." Zora looked at him, her heart stirring despite the doubts. "You kept your promise today," she said, her voice soft. "Don't make me regret trusting you." Thane's eyes held hers, his voice a whisper. "I won't." "I'm all in, Zora." Their fingers laced together, a quiet vow in the fading light. Inside, Joran. Cade burst into the kitchen, his arms full of files, his grin wide. "Y'all, we did it." Vion's face was like she swallowed a lemon. He tripped over Lazare, who yowled, sending papers flying. Vina laughed, tossing him a dish towel. "Boy, you're a walking disaster. Clean that up before Ismene paints you into her next mural." Joran groaned, but his grin didn't fade. The victory suite. As the night deepened, Zora stood on the balcony of the blue room, the city twinkling in the distance. The ledger, the USB drive, the fight they'd won a battle, but the war wasn't over. Maison. Ciel was safe for now, but Vion's parting words echoed in her mind. She touched her necklace, drawing strength from her grandmother's legacy, from Miss Coralie's wisdom, from the community that had rallied last night. Whatever came next, Zora was ready. 1 year later, Maison Ciel stood as a beacon in the heart of New Orleans, its purple Victorian walls glowing under a gentle May rain. The storm was softer this time, a whisper compared to the hurricane that had brought Zora Nia Beaumont to its doorstep. String lights twinkled in the ancient oaks, casting a warm halo over the garden where laughter and music spilled from white canvas tents. The mansion had transformed into a thriving community hub. The third floor now housed a children's library with murals by Ismaine Dufour. The east wing offered apartments for displaced families, and the west wing buzzed with art studios and counseling rooms. Zora, now 27, stood at the center of it all, her beaded wooden necklace glinting against her cream-colored blouse, her curls loose and catching the mist. Tonight was a gala to celebrate Maison Ciel's first anniversary as a community sanctuary and to announce a new fund to rebuild neighborhoods hit by gentrification, starting with Zora's old block. The garden was alive with faces from the past year. Miss Coralie Bess serving gumbo from a steaming pot. Kellis Yara Tate snapping photos for her latest article. Joran Cade juggling a tray of beignets with his usual chaotic charm, and Evelina Vina Sable leading a Zydeco dance with Mr. Thibodeau's band. The air smelled of bayou spices, jasmine and hope, a testament to what Zora and Thane Idris Cole had built from the ashes of their rocky start. Zora stood on a small stage, a microphone in hand, her voice steady as she addressed the crowd. "Y'all, 1 year ago, I was lost in the rain thinking I'd never find my way again," she said, her brown eyes sweeping over the sea of faces. "But Maison Ciel found me. Helene Cole's dream found me. This place isn't just a house. It's a home for every soul who's been knocked down and still gets up. Tonight, we're launching the Helene Cole Fund to rebuild our communities, starting with the block I called home. Who's with me?" The crowd erupted, clapping and stomping their energy. A living pulse. Miss Coralie raised her ladle like a scepter, shouting, "That's my girl," while kids from the old neighborhood cheered, their faces bright with pride. Thane watched from the edge of the stage, his green eyes soft with admiration. In a tailored navy blazer and jeans, he looked every bit the CEO, but the warmth in his smile was all for Zora. Over the past year, they'd grown closer, their bond forged in late-night planning sessions, shared laughter and quiet moments in the hidden garden. The kiss that night, born of pain and passion, had been the start of something neither could name, yet a partnership, a possibility, a promise. Thane had kept his word, restructuring Cole Enterprises under Zora's Community Advisory Board, turning it into a model for ethical development. But Vion, Laveau's parting words, "You'll regret this," still lingered a shadow. They couldn't shake. Zora stepped off the stage, and Thane met her, his hand brushing hers. "You were incredible up there," he said, his voice low, meant for her alone. "Helene would have been so proud." Zora's lips curved, her necklace catching the light. "We're doing her dream justice." Thane, together. Their eyes held the Zydeco music fading into the background. The rain, a soft drumbeat overhead. For a moment, it was just them, the garden, the stars. Vina's voice broke the spell, booming across the tent. "Y'all, if Lazar doesn't knock over this dessert table, I'm calling it a miracle." The orange tabby perched precariously near a tray of pralines, flicked his tail, drawing laughs from the crowd. Joran Cade, trying to shoo the cat, tripped over a chair, sending beignets flying. "Man, why is it always me?" he groaned, dusting sugar off his shirt. Kelly, snapping a photo, cackled. Joran, stick to paperwork. Not cat wrangling. The crowd roared, the mood, light and infectious. Zora joined Vina at the dessert table, helping salvage the pralines. "You outdid yourself tonight," she said, nudging the older woman. Vina winked, her silver bangles jangling. "Child, I've been throwing parties since before you were born. But this one's for family." She squeezed Zora's hand, her eyes warm. "You're the heart of it, Zora. Don't you forget that." Zora's throat tightened, the word family hitting deep. Maison Ciel had given her more than a home. It had given her people who saw her, who fought for her. As the band struck up a slow jazz tune, Thane pulled Zora toward the hidden garden away from the crowd. The mosaic fountain glowed under fairy lights, roses climbing the iron trellises, their petals glistening with rain. He reached into his pocket, pulling out a small, ornate key, its brass surface etched with a rose. "This was my mom's," he said, his voice soft. "She left it for the keeper of the light. That's you. Zora, open it when you're ready." Zora took the key, her fingers brushing his, her heart stirring with a mix of gratitude and something deeper. "What's it for?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Thane's smile was tender, his eyes locked on hers. "A door in the East Wing basement. Mom said it's for the next generation of dreamers. Whatever's behind it, it's yours to find." Zora nodded, slipping the key into her pocket. her necklace warm against her skin. "Thank you, Thane," she said, her voice thick. "For this. For everything." He stepped closer, his hand grazing her cheek. But before he could speak, a shout from the main garden cut through the moment Kellis was at the gate, her face pale, her braids swinging as she waved Zora over. "Zora, you need to see this. Now." Zora and Thane hurried back the crowd, parting as they reached the entrance. There, under the dripping oaks, stood a woman in a black cloak, her face half hidden by a hood. She was about 50, her dark eyes sharp and unreadable, holding a leather-bound journal identical to Helene's. The crowd hushed, sensing the shift. The rain falling harder now, Kellis leaned in, her voice a tense whisper. "That's Celeste. No. She worked with Helene years ago, then vanished after she died. Nobody's seen her since until now." Celeste's gaze locked on Zora, piercing through the mist. Without a word, she placed a sealed envelope on the gatepost, its paper stark against the wet iron. Scrawled across it in elegant script were the words, "Maison Ciel is not yours." "Zora," Helene lied. Then, as silently as she'd come, Celeste turned and disappeared into the rain, her cloak blending with the shadows. Zora's heart pounded, her fingers trembling as she grabbed the envelope. The crowd murmured Vina's bangles, clinking as she stepped closer, her face grim. "What in the world?" she muttered, but Zora barely heard her. She tore open the seal, her eyes scanning the single page inside, but the words blurred her mind, reeling. Thane touched her arm, his voice urgent. "Zora, what is it? What's it say?" She looked up, her brown eyes wide with a mix of fear and resolve. "We need to talk," she said, her voice barely audible over the rain. Thane nodded, his face taut, but before they could move, the string lights flickered, then plunged the garden into darkness. Gasps rippled through the crowd, the Zydeco band faltering the rain's patter, suddenly deafening. The tents swayed, shadows dancing in the brief flashes of lightning. Zora clutched the envelope, her necklace a steady weight against her chest, but the world felt unsteady, like the ground was shifting beneath her. The screen faded to black, and a single line appeared in white text. "What truth awaits at Maison Ciel." A lone jazz note hung in the air, mournful and unresolved, followed by the relentless drum of rain. In the silence that followed, the gala's joy felt like a distant memory. Vina gathered the crowd, her voice steady as she urged everyone inside, but her eyes lingered on Zora, full of unspoken worry. Icemine stood by the fountain, her sketch pad open to a new drawing. A woman in a cloak, holding a journal, her face obscured. Joran, still dusting sugar from his shirt, muttered to Kellis, "Man, I thought Vion was bad. This is next-level creepy." Kellis shushed him, her camera trained on the gate as if Celeste might reappear. Inside Maison Ciel, Zora and Thane stood in the foyer, the chandelier casting fractured light across their faces. The envelope lay on the hall table, its words, a silent challenge. "What do we do?" Thane asked, his voice low, his hand hovering near hers. Zora's eyes were fixed on the paper, her mind racing through the past year. The fight for Maison Ciel, the community they'd built, the trust she'd placed in Thane. "We find out what she meant," Zora said, her voice firm, despite the tremor in her chest. "Helene chose me for a reason. I'm not letting some ghost from the past take that away." Thane nodded, his fingers finally finding hers, a quiet anchor. "We'll figure it out together," he said, his green eyes steady. "No more secrets." Zora squeezed his hand, her necklace warm against her skin, a reminder of her grandmother's strength, of Miss Coralie's wisdom, of the Zydeco dances that had carried her through. Whatever Celeste's letter held, whatever truth lay behind that locked door in the basement, Zora was ready to face it. But as the rain pounded outside, a question gnawed at her. Had Helene's dream been built on a lie? The night stretched on the gala's music, a faint echo in the distance. In her studio, Ismail added a new detail to her sketch. A key in the woman's hand, its rose etching glowing faintly. In the kitchen, Vina hummed an old jazz tune, her rings catching the light as she stirred a pot of late-night gumbo, a prayer for the family she'd found. Kellis scrolled through her photos, pausing on one of Celeste's cloaked figure, her journalist's instincts buzzing. Joran, sprawled on a couch, muttered, "I need a vacation after this," earning a laugh from Miss Coralie, who patted his shoulder. "Child, you ain't seen nothing yet." And in the foyer, Zora and Thane stood together. The envelope a silent challenge, the key in Zora's pocket. A mystery waiting to be unlocked. Maison Ciel, with its creaking floors and jasmine-scented air, held its breath as if it too knew the story wasn't over. The rain fell harder, washing away the boundaries of the past, while destiny, that clever architect, drew its plans in the puddles at their feet. "Hey, y'all, what's in that envelope? And whose?" Celeste Arnaud. Can Zora and Thane uncover the truth before it tears Maison Ciel apart? Smash that subscribe button and drop a comment with your theories. Your support keeps this story alive, and we can't wait to see what you think.